I'm Armanda Famiglietti. Tonight's show is about our local hero, Sybil Ludington, and the man who knows her best. Welcome, Vin Dacquino.
Well, thank you.
So, Vin, you've written the book on Sybil Ludington.
I sure have.
In fact, you've written 4 books on
Yeah.
Sybil Ludington. And
2 adult and 2 children.
And what's the most recent book?
The most recent is Patriot, Hero of the Hudson Valley, The Life and Ride of Sybil Ludington.
And we have a cover of that book.
Yes,
so we're gonna
and
read
that book was released less than a week ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Actually, a little more than a week ago.
Okay, so while they're getting the picture of the book,
Yep.
which is coming up in a second, there it is.
Yep.
Now, that's a paperback, right?
Yes, and that's an interesting photo on the book because the woman third from the left is Anna Hyatt Huntington, the woman who created the statue when she was 90 years old.
So third from the left.
Yep.
So she's
With
not
the
the one
pillbox hat.
Oh,
There you go.
All right. So the one in the middle of the 3 ladies.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
the middle of the 4 ladies.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Okay.
she's on that
Anyway,
book cover somewhere. And she was a sculptress, and
Yes.
she created that statue. Where is that statue?
That statue is on Lake Lenita in Carmel, New York. And Sybil's story is an interesting one. I was on my way to school when I saw a sign that said Sybil Ludington rode by this spot in 1777 to help repel the British in Danbury, Connecticut. Well, I had no idea who Sybil was, and I had no idea what happened in Danbury. As it turns out, Sybil is a first responder from the Revolutionary War.
Well, she's the Paul Revere of Putnam
Yeah,
County.
yes, and she's a first responder. What happened was one night in April 26th, 1777, a messenger came to the door. They were sitting by the fire.
Whose door?
Colonel Ludington's.
Is her
because
dad?
Her dad. And Colonel Ludington had 400 men. And
He was in the militia?
in the militia, which is volunteer. So when the messenger banged on the door, he said, "We need your 400 men." And the colonel said, "What? My men are militia. They're farmers. They're on their farms. It's Sunday night,
So
9
let me
o'clock."
interrupt you. Where'd this man come from?
He came from Connecticut, and even though the colonel was from New York, it was only like 20 miles to Danbury. So he banged on the door and he said, look to the east, and they could see the red skies and
Because?
2,000 men. General Tryon of the British Army, who was, by the way, a former officer that the colonel was under when he was with the British before he switched over to the Americans, came up through Connecticut, 2,000 men.
These are
and
British men.
British men, and they burned Danbury, or at least parts of it, destroyed houses, killed General Wooster.
Why'd they do that? What was in Danbury that they wanted?
Supplies by gazillions. There were barrels of molasses, flour, sugar, rum that they got into a little bit, and jackets, shoes, just all kinds of supplies. So it was devastating. They needed someone quickly. There was no one to send. The militia was on the farm. So 16-year-old Sybil had to...
Who's Sybil?
Sybil was
Daughter?
the colonel's daughter.
Oldest
the
daughter.
oldest daughter. She's 16 years old. Just turned 16 3 weeks before the ride. Basically 15. Got on a horse and went riding through the countryside. When she got back home, the men had already gathered
So let me back up. She went riding through the countryside to alert the colonel's militia.
to get over to the parade grounds
Okay.
so that they could leave in the morning and go to help. The only problem
Go to
is
help the Revolutionary Army who's fighting in Danbury.
in Danbury. And by the time they finally got there, Tryon knew that men were coming in all directions. General David Wooster, General Goselick-Silman, and a guy you may have heard of, Benedict Arnold, all were on their way. He knew that. He got nervous. Tryon got nervous, said, "We're out of here." Gathered his men, and instead of a battle in Danbury, it became a battle in Ridgefield, Connecticut. David Wooster was killed, and the result was they chased Tryon back to the sea.
So because of the 400 militiamen that
And
Sybil Lud-
all the Connecticut men.
Okay.
So it wasn't just the
Oh, okay.
New Yorkers. The men that came in from all different
Connecticut
directions.
militia as well.
But New York certainly did help. And my understanding is that Tryon's men were mostly near Campo Beach, which is today near Norwalk, Connecticut. They may not have been directly in the Battle of Richfield, but they helped as they chased the men to continue and get them onto their ships.
Okay, so did
Now,
we win the Battle of Ridgefield?
We did not, and that'll come up in a minute, because what happened was, remember, the Battle of Danbury had already happened. He was already on his way back. He did his mission, and all they did was
Help
kept
to
him
chase
moving.
him.
Yeah,
Okay.
helped to chase him. So that's the story I know. And I said, I'm writing a book. I need to tell her a story. So I wrote a book called The Call to Arms.
Okay, and we have the
Yep,
cover of
we have that
book.
cover. So I wrote a book called The Call to Arms. When I wrote that book, an amazing thing happened.
What year did you write that book?
I wrote that book in 2000. That's when it was published. But from 97 to 2000, I researched. 3 years it took me, because there was one paragraph that kept being repeated over and over again. After her famous ride, Sybil married her childhood sweetheart, Henry, or Edmund, or Edward, depending on the article, who was a hero, who was a lawyer.
He might have been a hero,
I know,
too.
really.
A lot of
He
heroes.
was. He was a hero. Who was a lawyer in Catskill, New York. She had 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. Her son was a hero in Kansas. Wrong.
Okay, so let me back up a little, because I want to make sure I show all of the covers of
All right.
the books that you've written
Yep.
about Sybil, and there
Yep.
are 4 altogether.
Yep.
So we just saw 2.
So this is a children's book that's really a condensed
It's kind of a
version.
YA, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of a YA. This is for like middle school.
Yeah.
And the idea was to give a book to children to tell Sybil's story. It doesn't have a lot of the detail and the sources and resources of the first book.
And then there's another book that you wrote for smaller
Yeah, this was a
children.
fun book. This is a book of Sybil and her 6 grandchildren. At the time I wrote this, I had no idea who the 6 children were and what became of them. I now
Okay,
do.
now you know.
I now know.
Okay, so
So what happened
so
was...
let's go to the errors.
Yep.
You
So-
said wrong.
Yep.
Why?
All those
why?
errors were wrong. So now, what I needed to do...
Look, there's
Yep.
them.
So what I needed to do was I needed to go back after 20 years. I said, it's time to revisit. Oh my God, all the errors that I found
Now, how
were
did you
back
find
again.
these errors? How come you found them and the other folks didn't?
Because I was able to find pension papers in Washington, D.C.
You went to Washington.
Oh, I sure did. I went to Washington. I went to Unadilla and Catskill so many times, people thought I lived there. You know, they'd say, hello, hi, Vin, you know, and they're like, where's this guy live? You know, so I did some serious research for 3 years. And these are some of, go back to...
Yeah, let's see number 1 again.
Go back to
That
number
was
1 again.
Great.
So Sybil was not born in Fredericksburg, New York, where she lived with her family until she was 23.
That's not true.
Not true. What happened was she was actually born in Connecticut, and then they went
Okay.
to New York. That's where her father was actually from.
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Okay. Can I just say that Fredericksburg there is no more Fredericksburg.
There is no more Fredericksburg. It's Patterson.
Patterson.
So
Okay.
where she, incidentally, is buried today.
Okay. Keep going.
So then, when you look at some of the articles, it said she married Henry or Edward or Edmund with a U, and she married neither one of those
Did
three.
she marry an Ogden?
She married Edmond, and that's on the grave.
Okay.
And yet people ignored that, even though the grave has been there since 1839.
And the grave is in Patterson.
And some Patterson. Her husband was not a lawyer in Catskill. He was actually a farmer and a tavern keeper. Sybil did not marry her childhood sweetheart. She got married at 23 years old after she helped her mother raise 11 of her 12 children. Sybil did,
Not mother of 6.
she was not a mother of 6, 4 boys and 2 girls. I was able to prove that there was an error.
Well, how many kids did she have?
One child. And guess how many kids he had?
6.
4 boys, 2 girls. And guess what he did for a living?
He was a lawyer.
He was a lawyer.
I see how
they
these things
switched names and threw off historians
sloppy
for years.
research, I'd say.
Go back to the mistakes. And her son was not a hero for trying to save women and children. The switch was her grandson who was a hero, not her son. Today,
so what war was that? Fort Riley.
Fort Riley wasn't really a war. It was creating a fort, Fort Riley in Kansas,
Okay, so the Indians.
to fight the Indians more than anything else. But he
Okay,
was in several battles.
Let's go back.
And let's go back again to the eras. And finally, Ludingtonville, New York. Now, it was not named in honor of a ride. It was Ludington in the 1850s. So why all these errors? Go to part 2.
So tell me about Ludington while we're waiting for that slide.
Ludington was named for Colonel Ludington because he owned the property.
Okay.
And very common in those days, they would name little hamlets after the people who owned them. She did not die at 78 years old, but mathematicians said she was born in 61 and she died in 1839. What would that make her?
Okay, but she
78.
She died at 77.
She died before her birthday. So she died at 77 and 10 months. She did not ride through Connecticut. We have a photo that you're going to see that we'll talk about that. And the Patriots did not defeat the British. We have a photo that talk about that.
Well, hold on. Somewhere it said that the Patriots defeated the
Yes,
British? How did they get that wrong?
Wait till you see it. And I don't know how they did.
But
let's go to the next slide.
Let's keep the slide up.
Oh, wait. Keep it up for a second. Her name, as it appears on the cover of this book. Oh, she was not a child patriot. I discovered that a replica of the statue on Lake Oneida was in Washington, D.C. at the DAR headquarters.
We're going to see that.
And I said, oh my God, I need to see that. Well, when they sent me the photo, wait till you see what I discovered.
Okay.
So then her name, as it appears on the cover of this book, is not the way she herself spelled it. There is a whole history in my new book on her name. First mention of her ride was not in 1880. You're going to see that now, with my new venture of writing a new book, I uncovered family treasures.
Okay.
So flip. Let's see the next slide.
So I think
Look
this
at
is
this.
Again something that's wrong about poor.
The Daughters of the American Revolution in the 1970s created a series of medals to honor the great women of the American Revolution. DAR made a medal number 20 for Sybil Ludington. On the front of it, there's Sybil on a horse with an unidentified patriot watching her, and the back of the medal says, Sybil Ludington. She volunteered to ride alone through the New York countryside to muster her father's regiment. Her mission was crucial to the Patriot victory at Danbury.
Oh, jeez.
Oops, there was no Patriot victory at Danbury. And
I can't believe the DAR got that so wrong.
Well, her entire life is marked by error. Now watch the next one. The next one's even more mind-boggling.
Okay, the stamp.
They make a stamp in 1961, a United States postal stamp. On the front, they call her a contributor to the cause. On the back, it says, riding through the Connecticut countryside. Oops. She went through the New York countryside. Even the United States postal stamp.
So who was responsible for all these mistakes?
What really happened was that in those days, they didn't have the internet. So,
but wasn't there an historian?
Well, yeah, but the stamp one is simple. Who did she try to save? The people of Danbury in Connecticut. Guess what? There's a Kent, Connecticut. So whoever did it saw, Kent, Connecticut.
Okay.
So they assumed, Kent,
Putnam
New York,
County.
which is what she did. She wrote through Kent, New York. So it was a simple mistake.
Okay.
You know. So, and Same
I'm
thing
never
with the
gonna
DAR.
trust a stamp
Well,
again.
the DAR assumed that there was a victory, but it wasn't. When General Tryon came through, he burned all the supplies. By the time they caught up with him, he was out of Danbury.
No victory.
There was no Danbury, and there was certainly no victory in
Okay.
Danbury.
So-
Not
so-
for the Patriots.
Time is a Russian. So let's talk about what you discovered. Now, you discovered some stuff at the archives
Yeah.
in Washington,
Yeah.
D.C.
Oh yeah, pension papers.
No, well, what about the letters?
Yes, when she was 77 years old, I found out that
We have a slide of the pension.
well she filled
The pension
not that
paper.
one.
Yeah,
So what happened was,
there it is.
no, that's something else.
No, it says
Go back.
civil pension
Yes,
rejection letter.
that's a rejection letter. That comes at the end of the talk. Stop rushing me, Armanda.
I'm sorry. It's a long talk.
So what happened was there were errors. These errors were making me nuts. So I decided that I had to go back, and every time I looked, even right today, if you Google Sybil's name right now, all those errors we just reviewed are coming up again.
Sure, because what's
So-
on the internet stays
Right,
on the internet.
and they made me nuts. So worse than that, after I found all those errors, there were 4 things that kept coming up that blew me away. 1, Sybil is a myth, a legend. She never existed. 2, her father was never involved in the Danbury affair. 3, the battle was insignificant, so there was really no purpose for the ride. And 4, she never rode. I said, wrong. Got me on my feet, got me furious. I went back to the drawing board. Well, now, flip, and here I went to the New York Historical Society because they also said that Martha Lamb, who in my first book, the first mention of the ride was 1907. In 2012, they discovered a book. By digitizing a lot of these old books, they found out that Martha Lamb, a famous historian, wrote about the ride in 1880. So a lot of these naysayers said, all right, well, 1907
It's still 100
isn't,
years
yeah.
after.
So they said, it's better. It's 1880. However, no sources. So
Martha Lamb was a great historian.
she was a great historian.
But she didn't note her sources.
She didn't note her sources. So naysayers said, get out of here. With no sources, we're not taking it. We don't care. She could have made it up.
Okay.
They also said that William Pelletreau, History of Putnam County, talked about the Ludingtons. He never gave any sources.
He talked about the ride.
Right. So that no, but he did talk about the colonel, and he talked about the family, and
How
gave no
could he
sources.
leave out the
And
ride?
I know, how could he? Especially since, wait till you hear. So I said, I have to get that straight because naysayers.
Right.
So I went to New York Historical Society to find Martha Lamb's notes.
Okay.
I go there, and the head of manuscripts and I start being friendly. And he said to me, so you're looking for Ludington information? I said, yeah. He said, why don't you look in the Ludington family papers? I said, what? He said, the Ludington family papers. He had a box of letters from Sybil's nephew in 1854, not
Okay, let's
1880.
see the 1854
so let's go look
letter.
at the letter.
Wow.
And this letter from 1854 is a letter to a Mr. Henry Deming from Danbury, who is going to be an orator for a celebration of a statue for General Wooster, who was a Mason. And they're going to create a statue in 1854. He writes a letter. In this letter, clearly describes the whole ride, describes how Sybil saved her father. So
Wow.
this is now the first mention of the ride. And it goes
Okay.
all the way back to 1854. You know who wrote the letter? The colonel's grandson, Sybil's brother's son,
Her nephew.
her nephew. So amazing. So it brings us back. He talks about the ride. He talks about how Aunt Sybil mounted a horse. He talks about how Aunt Sybil saved her father's life. Now, I thought that was amazing. I said, I did it. Yes, there's the proof. Turns out that Charles Henry Ludington, the grandson, has a sister who's older.
Okay.
Now, Charles and his...
Let's see that letter.
Yep. So now I call it Aunt Laura, even though it's her niece, because she wrote a letter to Charles's daughter.
Okay.
What happened was that these Ludingtons all got together, especially Charles and Louis S. Patrick, who is the son of his aunt's, the son of his aunt. Mm-hmm. So he's like second cousin. What year is this letter? Well, hang on to that for a second.
Okay.
So what happens is the two of them, the cousins, decide they're going to get the information they need from the Ludington legacy.
Okay.
They create a form and they send it out to all the Ludingtons.
Oh, okay.
And they say, give us information. Well, his older sister says, oh, okay. So when she gets the letter from the niece, she writes the niece back and she says, yes, I was at the family reunions. Now, I can't read that from here, but I'm telling you what it says is that she's at the family reunions with Sybil.
Wow,
And Sybil recounts to Laura Ludington Hustis, she recounts to her the ride and the saving the father. So Aunt Laura writes back all the things she remembers that Aunt Sybil told her. Now, this letter isn't until, I think it was 1890. It was many years later, but the only reason it's many years later is because nobody asked her. Okay. So when they finally did ask her, she sent them a letter. Part of what's in that letter is what was used in the memoirs, which incidentally also has no sources.
What memoirs? Whose memoirs? Did Sybil write a
in
memoir?
1907, Charles and his other sister, Lavinia, paid a biographer to write the memoirs of Colonel Henry Ludington. That's how we found out about the ride, supposedly. And the other cousin, not Charles, Louis Patrick, wrote an article for the Connecticut magazine. And his article describes the ride. Okay. But that's, again, 1907.
And that's really the first time the general public knew there was
right.
Sybil Ludington and she
And that's
wrote.
why they said, come on, it's over 100 years later, who cares? It's not true.
Okay, well, what about Miss Lamb?
So then we were able to find out that Miss Lamb was actually before that. Now we find out that Miss Lamb was given the information by the people who gave it to Willis Fletcher Johnson, who wrote the memoirs. Now, when we look here, oh my God, it's a mind blower. On the top of the sketch that Miss Lamb published, we have a note from Charles. It says, to Martha Lamb, 1878. Her article was published in 1880. Here's the source.
We have like 2 minutes left.
Oh,
so
get out of here.
I know, I'm telling you, it goes fast.
I know.
So let's look at a few more of the slides.
Go to the slides and I'll just very briefly tell you that here's what happened.
Okay.
This one.
Now, where is that?
That is in Washington, D.C.
Where?
I call them to find out if this.
Where in Washington?
It's in the headquarters of the DAR.
Okay.
But the CAR, Children of the American Revolution, rented space. They rent space and they put an exhibit. I asked them to send me a photo. Oh my God, 3 of my books are at the base of the statue.
And that's the
replica. And
it
describes the ride.
A replica of the statue that's
A replica of the statue
Oneida.
and a painting of Anna Hyatt Huntington creating the statue. So I have become part of the history in the museum. Okay. Why is this essential? Because the DAR is denying Sybil as a patriot because they said they did not have enough proof of the ride.
Okay, so you're going back
Hopefully,
to the DAR.
I'm going back to the DAR and say, look, here's Aunt Laura's letter, man.
Okay.
So keep going.
What else? Oh.
This is an envelope explaining that Pelletreau
Again? Who's that?
Pelletreau is the person
historian?
who wrote History of Putnam County. Naysayers said, yeah, well, if she was so important, why didn't Pelletreau cover it? Good question, because in the sketch that he gave her, the ride is mentioned. He left it out. She didn't get the recognition she deserved, and she's still not getting it, even with the DAR, because they have very strict rules, but their rules are based on military documents. Women were not allowed to be soldiers. Finding military document on the person that alerted other people on the ride isn't going to happen.
Okay, with 1 minute left.
Oh man, there's so much.
Hold on. So if people want to know more, with 1 minute left,
Read the book.
Read the book and go see some of your talks. And
Yeah.
we have a slide of
I'm all over
where
the place.
you're going to be speaking. And this only goes to May 11th.
Yeah.
So but you're booked through when?
Oh yeah, I am booked right till October.
Okay, so go on your website.
Go on the website. You'll find it. My website is vtdacquino.com. And I have a list of all the places. There's several places that haven't been here. This coming week, I will be in Lake George at Fort William Henry.
It's top of the list.
Yeah, because her father fought there.
Colonel Ludington.
Colonel Ludington. So, a whole lot more information. I am going to be doing a show on my own show.
That's right. You have your
One-on-one,
own show.
Let's Talk Writing. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that we were not able to cover here. Armanda, thank you for this opportunity.
Sure.
Sybil deserves to be given the credit that she should have. She was a hero. She is what great Americans are made of.
Okay. Let me just interrupt because we got to go.
Hurry up.
But if you want to see that show and
Yep.
all the other shows that you do one-on-one, you
Yep.
can go to your YouTube.
Yep. VT Dacquino, YouTube, one-on-one. And I've done 140 something shows. Next week I'll be doing a show specifically on Sybil.
And who are you going to talk to?
Me, one-on-one with Sybil Ludington.
All right. I hope you can fit it all in.
I hope
it's
so,
a
too.
fascinating story. Thanks,
Yeah,
Vinny,
thank
for
you.
coming.
A pleasure.
Thanks for doing this for Putnam County. And
love it.
Thanks to the viewers who watch and the crew.